tonight, Via Rail has made the decision to cancel all train service right across the country because of anti-pipeline protests and blockades. Via says they will give full refunds for all canceled trips, adding it had no choice but to make the decision after CN announced today the blockades have forced them to begin a shutdown of operations in eastern Canada. A statement from CN reads, while the illegal blockades have come to an end in Manitoba and may be ending imminently in British Columbia, the orders of the court in Ontario have yet to be enforced and continue to be ignored. In the face of these challenges, it is now left with the only remaining responsible option, progressively shutting down its eastern Canadian operations until the illegal blockades end. Now, before all of this, there was a sliver of hope at that Ontario blockade in Belleville. The federal government is offering to sit down and talk it out with the protesters. Canada's Indigenous Services Minister is asking them to clear their camp and meet with him. Olivia Stefanovich has more from Tyendinaga, Mohawk territory.
Down this road, a group of Mohawks continue to privately discuss their next move, and it doesn't appear they're leaving anytime soon. A Mohawk warrior flag continues to flap on the arm of a rail crossing, while protesters make themselves at home. The demonstration is not blocking the rail lines, but its proximity led the railway to shut down all train service now on day 8 of the protest in support of the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs opposing a natural gas pipeline in BC. The federal government is getting directly involved. In an email, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller tells the Mohawks he's willing to meet with them on Saturday, and he's requested they stand down. This is a highly volatile situation, Miller writes, and the safety of all involved is of utmost importance. At the camp, some people aren't buying Miller's overture.
When you have politicians, your colonial politicians like Mark Miller, turning the situation around like as if we're the ones that are being violent.
While some criticize the offer, at least one Mohawk demonstrator who didn't want to go on camera says he sees a possible positive outcome from a meeting with the minister. So does the Ontario government.
It depends on the prominence of the federal government and a commitment to actually be there and deal with these issues, as I said to you, that underpin the basis for the blockade.
Meanwhile, on Parliament Hill,
the blockades that are happening around the country are illegal, and they're having a huge negative impact on people's lives.
The federal government is facing mounting economic and political pressure to find a solution.
It has been Trudeau's approach to the energy sector that has emboldened people to take these kinds of illegal actions. His refusal to condemn people breaking the law and violating court injunctions will only make the problem worse.
What's left unresolved at this point is how to ensure the rule of law is respected, and specifically whose law should be followed, that of Canada or Indigenous people. This group of Mohawks say they don't recognize the court injunction they're defying because they say Canadian law doesn't apply on their territory, so they remain at the tracks. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Tyendinaga.
I'm late for work. I'm always late because of TTC.
It's just a big sinking feeling in my stomach. Not again, this again.
Not a good day.
Off the tracks and onto buses, another TTC derailment and another slow and frustrating commute for thousands. For the second time in less than a month, the TTC has had a derailment, forcing a section of the subway to close during the morning rush. Greg Ross is live tonight from St. George. And Greg, do we know how this second derailment happened?
Well, the TTC tells us, Dwight, that they are still investigating what happened this morning. What I can tell you, it was early this morning, just before that big rush, that the TTC says that a work car derailed in a tunnel near St. George Station here. This was a car that was being used by workers who were doing some overnight maintenance. In fact, they were just heading back after finishing up their shift when the car went off the rails, blocking the tracks. That forced the TTC to shut down service on this line, and that left tens of thousands of people scrambling to try and find a way to get to work.
I got a whole bunch of them there. They're coming.
Another day, another delay for TTC riders.
I'm always late because of TTC.
It's just a big sinking feeling in my stomach. Not again, this again.
This is pretty crazy. I'm probably going to be pretty late for work.
And she wasn't the only one who didn't make it to work on time this morning.
How far south are we going?
Union.
After service was forced to shut down on the southbound Line 1 subway between St. Clair and Union stations.
How did this happen?
So at approximately 5:30 this morning, one of our work cars derailed just south of St. George Station.
Tens of thousands of commuters were affected.
Southbound shuttle to St. Andrew across the street.
Forced to line up on the street and wait for shuttle buses that were brought in to get people moving.
There's a lot of people for the amount of buses.
The TTC says there were more than 100 buses, but still people waited in line as long as an hour to get on one, leading to more frustration.
Am I in front of you right now?
Tempers boiled over as some riders tried to cut the line.
We need more people policing this line, right? There are people just walking in, like this gentleman right here. Yeah, guys, just cross the street. I've been in this line for almost 40 minutes. I need to get to work.
No words to explain how frustrating it is on a Thursday, dear, and I have a meeting to attend to too as well, so it's going to be a little bit interesting.
Thankfully, we had the Toronto Police Services with us, and we had our guys out there to make sure that everyone remained calm.
It took more than 7 hours for TTC workers to fix the problem, and the line remained closed the entire time.
So crews went down to track level. They got the work car on the track and re-railed.
This is the second shutdown on the TTC subway in less than a month. In January, a partial derailment of a car forced a section of Line 2 to close
Eastbound subway, westbound shuttle bus.
for several hours during the morning commute.
What do you guys need to do to ensure that this kind of thing doesn't continue to happen over and over again?
That's a great question, and we will start our investigation right away to see what happened in this particular instance. And every instance is different, but we don't want to see this happen either. And the mayor also weighing in on this today, demanding an investigation into what caused this derailment. And he also apologized to riders who were inconvenienced by this. Now, remember, the city just came up with $4+ billion in funding from the city's building fund levy. And part of that money, Dwight, is supposed to go towards maintenance and upkeep of these tracks. So it'll be interesting to see what that investigation leads to.
Greg, thank you. We've told you before about the spread of hallway medicine in this province, and tonight we get an inside look at how one major hospital is trying to reduce demand for beds, starting in the emergency room. Mike Crawley has this exclusive story.
Nearly 200 patients pass through this emergency room at Toronto's Sunnybrook Hospital on a typical day, and staff noticed a problem.
Patients that come in, they need to be medically worked up, but they don't necessarily need to stay in this acute level of care for any long period of time.
Particularly with frail elderly patients, ER doctors are sometimes reluctant to send them home.
There are patients who maybe we felt because of their risk of falls, they need to stay in hospital.
And then, Sean, if I can engage you.
Sunnybrook's solution? Creating this team that looks beyond the hospital to ensure those ER patients can be safe at home.
Apparently his wife heard a bang this morning, found her husband on the bathroom floor.
A geriatric nurse, a social worker, a physiotherapist, staff from home care agencies, all part of what Sunnybrook calls its ED1 team. Every morning they walk through their target group of emergency room patients.
So they come in with different syndromes, they come in with falls, they come in with delirium, depression.
The team runs 7 days a week, setting up home care and other health supports straight from the ER.
We've been able to get patients mobilized, connect them to community resources, and make sure that they're going home safely in the evening instead of staying overnight or being admitted to hospital.
It's part of an effort to reduce the demands on Sunnybrook, struggling, like many Ontario hospitals, with more patients than beds. Sunnybrook's team launched in October and is already showing signs of success, a nearly 5% drop in admissions among patients aged 70 and older.
We really are able to reduce the number of patients who are in hallways in our emergency department, as well as the number of patients who are stuck in the waiting room.
It makes this busy ER a little less busy and makes patients happier not to spend the night in hospital. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
There's been a huge spike in the number of newly confirmed cases of COVID-19 in China. Officials there changed their criteria for diagnosing the disease, something Ontario's health experts have questions about.
Is it only typical of COVID-19, as we're calling it now? Or could it be influenza? Could be other viruses that are going at the same time. We don't know that. How specific is it at this stage? And we need to get those answers from China.
Whether that's live or...
So far, there have been 3 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Ontario. 2 of those people are still considered to have the disease. The third, a woman in London, was declared free of it this week. Officials also updated the situation for Canadians evacuated from Wuhan, China. They say they've tested 3 people for COVID-19 so far. All 3 tests came back negative. And as we told you, China reported a record increase today in the number of cases, and it's the number of deaths from the disease too. New coronavirus infections rose by more than 15,000 today for a total of almost 60,000 cases in China. The number of new deaths jumped sharply too by 254 for a total of 1,367 fatalities. But China says the upsurge is because of changes in diagnosis and reporting. The World Health Organization also tried to tamp down concerns about the spike in numbers, saying they don't represent a significant change in the trajectory of the outbreak. Now, outside of China, the biggest number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 is on a cruise ship anchored off the coast of Japan. Hundreds of cases of the disease have been diagnosed on the Diamond Princess, a number that's increasing daily. So imagine being stuck in quarantine on that ship. That's the situation facing a Scarborough couple tonight. Nick Boisvert has their story.
We go through the emotional roller coaster every day.
For more than a week, Diana and Alan Chow have been trapped in the Tokyo Bay. Mostly, they've been stuck in their room as the coronavirus ripples across their ship.
The infected number start from 1 person to right now 218. Will you be afraid? I would. I am afraid right now.
Many of those infected passengers have been moved off the ship for treatment, including 12 Canadians. But those who aren't sick are still on board, confined almost entirely to their cabins. With the days mounting, so are their questions, like when can they leave and what exactly the plan is. The Chows say the cruise line and Japanese government have been no help so far.
Yes, there is nowhere you can call for help. We did call the Japanese Canadian embassy. All they can say to us, well, we sympathy your situation. And then we call Ottawa. The answer is same thing.
They're working on it.
Yeah, they're working on it.
With no evidence to back up those assurances, the family is using Twitter to apply some pressure. Their new account documents their dismal experience on the ship.
The goal was to kind of expose what's happening on the Princess Cruise because it's not great. The conditions are not great. The level of sanitation's not that great.
Their daughter Tiffany is helping them share the story.
I want my parents to come home, and a lot of other people want their families to come home too.
This morning in Senegal, Foreign Affairs Minister François-Philippe Champagne said there is a plan in the works.
We understand that from the Japanese authorities that they may allow for some people to disembark from the ship and be put in quarantine on shore.
There's no timeline as to when that could happen, and the quarantine plan will be led by the Japanese government. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
And the passengers stuck on board another cruise ship also have some hope today after being stranded at sea for nearly 2 weeks. Cheers erupted as the MS Westerdam docked in Cambodia this morning. It was barred from 5 other countries over fears of the coronavirus, even though there are no confirmed cases on board. 279 Canadians are among the 2,200 people on the ship. Passengers could be allowed to disembark and start heading home as early as tomorrow.
Just so...
Extreme cold weather alerts in place in Colin. I was out there this afternoon, and in the words of Phil Collins, we can feel it in the air tonight.
Yes, you can. All day, you know, feeling that temperature kind of falling off once the cold front went through. To put things in perspective for you, this morning, the temperature was -1, and our wind chill at 8 a.m., -4. That's how it felt. Well, by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, it's going to feel like close to -30. And in some areas, it will feel like -30 or colder. But for Toronto, this is where I'm putting us at 8 a.m. And we are going to see that temperature right around -20. And that is why Environment Canada has put out this extreme cold warning. All the areas that you see in purple, it is going to be chilly around the Niagara Peninsula back towards southwestern Ontario, just not quite meeting the criteria. We're talking about temperatures of -20 or colder as you track northward, and those wind chills near that -30 minus 30 again, or colder. And going into parts of northern Ontario, we're talking towards minus 40, even minus 45 with the wind chill. So extreme cold. It is dangerous when it's like this. You have to be protected. You can't be outside unprotected for long, and pets as well have to be looked after. Now, we did have that burst of kind of snow pushing through with the front. That's still a little bit drifting snow because the winds are a little bit strong, but otherwise that's been clearing away from us. Our current temperature is now at minus 9, and our wind chill already down to minus 17. So just plummeting from here. So the temperature going to minus 20. The good news in this is that tomorrow, hey, we'll have a lot of sunshine. But even in the afternoon, Dwight, our temperature is going to be about 10 degrees below seasonal. A warm-up coming for the weekend, though, and I'll have that coming up.
Minus 28. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The Toronto Police Service admitting tonight it used a controversial artificial intelligence system that can provide information as specific as your address and phone number from a photo. The chief has stopped his officers from using it. Angelina King joins us live for more on this now. And Angelina, last month, police said they weren't using this technology. What happened?
Well, now it's saying that some members began using Clearview AI in October with the intent of informally testing it. The chief only found out last Wednesday, and that's when he told them to stop. Now, Clearview AI has been heavily criticized for its threat to personal privacy. It can identify someone's name, phone number, occupation, even their address, based on nothing more than an online photo. So now, of course, we have a lot of questions for police. We've posed some of them to police, saying, asking who authorized officers to use Clearview, how was it used, how much did it cost, why didn't the chief know? The service wouldn't offer anyone to speak with us on camera, but did send us a statement, part of it saying, we have requested the Information and Privacy Commissioner and the Crown's Office to review the technology and its appropriateness as an investigative tool. Until a review is completed, it will not be used by TPS. Now, I spoke with Ontario's former privacy commissioner, who says she was dismayed to learn that Toronto police were using it.
Clearview is outrageous. They have scraped 3.9 billion facial images from social media all across the board. As I said, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube videos, without any consent or authority. And then they're selling that to law enforcement all over the place.
Now, another concern that's been brought up is the inaccuracies that can come with facial recognition and what that could potentially mean for law enforcement and then the court process.
We know that it simply isn't very good with faces that have dark skin. It's not very good with women. It's not very good with children. In other words, it works best only for white men. So anyone who's not a white male is at greater risk of being misidentified by the technology.
AI's website says it's being used by more than 600 law enforcement agencies. It doesn't plan to make the app public. There's a class action lawsuit against the startup arguing that it's a major threat to civil liberties. We have reached out to Clearview AI but haven't heard back. Just a quick note, Mayor John Tory wasn't aware that the technology was being used until today, and he says he supports the chief's move of suspending it for now. Dwight?
Thank you, Angelina. After the break, Hamilton's big night in Toronto.
It was amazing.
Oh, we loved it. I loved it.
The music is excellent. The choreography was outstanding. The leads were fantastic.
More from the premiere of the smash Broadway hit coming up next.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
The Toronto Black Film Festival honored a special guest today. The legendary filmmaker Spike Lee received the festival's 2020 Lifetime Achievement Award.
I'm very honored to be here to receive the Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm not dead yet, and I got a lot more films to make, a lot more stories to tell.
Organizers say it's to show their appreciation for all Lee has done for future generations, the black community, and cinema overall. Lee is best known for films like Do the Right Thing, Malcolm X, and The Black Klansman. The Toronto Black Film Festival is running in theaters across the city until Monday. Judging by that reaction, a standing ovation, a story about one of the American founding fathers is definitely one that Canadians want to see and hear as well. Yeah, Simonette Johnson was at the official premiere. She joins us now. I was there last night. I am still in awe of this incredible show, but how was it received overall?
Do you still have the energy coursing through your body?
I'm ready to go see it again.
I think that's the thing. I've seen it once in New York a few years ago, and I forgot about the sheer jolt of energy that you get as an audience member from being at this show. And of course, it is in its 5th year in New York. It has made around $700 million in its Broadway incarnation. And then there is a touring company, which was the one that performed here last night and will be performing at the Ed Mirvish Theatre for the next few months. I met a few people as well who got their tickets through the lottery because Mirvish was really trying to keep a tight lock on those scalpers to keep the tickets from skyrocketing. I actually feel they've been quite successful at it. A bunch of people who got their tickets for $10 and were really happy to go and see it. What has really become more than a musical, a pop culture phenomenon. Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote this in a kind of optimism of the Barack Obama era in the U.S. It tells the story, as you said, of Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of the U.S., who had a lot to do with also the development of their economic system because he's the Secretary of the Treasury. But it takes it's not an irreverent look at history, which I think a lot of people have said. It's just a fresh look at history with a colorblind cast, injecting obviously hip hop into it, but also a little more modern themes like social mobility, like immigration. There's a joke in there, immigrants, we get the job done. So I think it just makes history relevant to modern people and contemporary viewers. We got a chance to chat with some audience coming out. Here's what they had to say.
It was amazing. I was really impressed with it. The singing, the acting, everything. It was fantastic.
Oh, we loved it. I loved it.
What was your favorite part?
The Schuyler sisters.
Yeah.
The music is excellent. The choreography was outstanding. The leads were fantastic.
The entire thing was all rap, so it was really interesting.
Fantastic show. I recommend it for everybody.
And you learned a lot of history, too. A lot of people did not know Hamilton was a Caribbean immigrant to the U.S., so that was kind of cool. It's had a big impact since it debuted in 2015. What's the impact here been like now?
I think that's one thing I've really learned. I was working on a story on this, that it's affected so many creators of color, people from marginalized communities who not only didn't see a lot of themselves on stage in terms of seeing people, performers who look like them, but also didn't see their stories reflected on stage and felt like Broadway and the world of musical theater was just not something that belonged to them. So we went to Sheridan College here in Oakville, Ontario, which has a very prestigious musical theater program. And here is what one of the young performers and creators there had to say about how Hamilton inspired her.
One thing it really opened my eyes to is the agency to also imagine myself in the past as well. That's something I never realized that I wasn't doing as I imagined creating. Knowing that although previously I may be written out of those stories or I may not see myself in a history textbook, it doesn't mean that as a creator I can't make those worlds and insert myself there as well.
She is barely in her 20s. I don't know about you, but I'm looking forward to seeing what she creates.
Kid, and we were there too, kids, so put us in there.
Absolutely. I thought that was such a good point. And just one thing was seeing it for the second time yesterday. It's so fast.
Yes.
There is so much. The talking and the rap is so fast.
Yeah.
It's dense. That first time around just kind of washed over me. Yesterday I actually picked up on some nuances, just made me like it all the better.
I'm looking forward to seeing it again. Thanks, Deanna.
You're welcome.
Ticket reseller StubHub has been fined $1.3 million for misleading customers about ticket prices. Canada's Competition Bureau says StubHub was advertising inaccurate prices. The ticket reseller would then charge customers mandatory fees in addition to the prices that were advertised. In 2017, the Bureau warned ticket vendors of doing this practice called drip pricing. Vendors were adding fees between 10 and 57%. In StubHub's case, the only way customers could see the true cost of tickets before finalizing a sale was by turning on optional filters. The company must now include all mandatory fees throughout the purchasing process for Canadian events. Still ahead, Hazel McCallion is turning 99, how she's celebrating the big birthday. But first,
that's a piece of MJ sewer pipe from the basement of a demolition.
Right in here?
Another one here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
we look into who's illegally dumping their construction waste around Scarborough and why it's costing taxpayers tens of thousands of dollars to clean it up. Parking lots, vacant properties, even city streets, they're being targeted by a band of dump truck drivers illegally ditching their loads of construction waste in Scarborough. And as John Lancaster tells us, it's costing taxpayers a lot to clean it all up.
I'm just going to show you some of the stuff these guys have done.
Dave Youngs is taking us on a tour of Scarborough, showing us about a dozen spots where dump truck drivers have illegally piled hundreds of loads of construction debris on private and public property. It happened to a property Youngs owns. The cleanup cost $20,000.
And there's still loads there. We haven't gotten rid of some of them. And we had to separate all the garbage. They was just straight demolition garbage, shingles, everything mixed in with the dirt.
It's not hard to find lots like this one on Galloway Road, buried deep in construction debris, all of it illegally dumped. Same here on Gerrard East. On Danforth Road, a once clean, vacant lot is now also buried, and it's not just dirt.
That's a piece of MJ sewer pipe from the basement of a demolition. Right, that's a little conduit from electrical. That's a concrete block right here.
On Eglinton Avenue East, at the site of the old Nob Hill Hotel, there's a football field-sized load of debris. The owner, Mattamy Homes, has told CBC News it's cleaned up illegally dumped construction materials once before, only to be hit again. Youngs, who runs an excavation company, says the latest cleanup will be costly.
This area here, I would say $60,000 to $70,000.
To clean it up?
Yeah, to clean it up, at least.
But it's big money for illegal dumpers who are supposed to spend time and money separating the waste from the soil and haul it to licensed facilities outside the city. Dumping it illegally, locally, is fast and free, but not for the landowner or taxpayers, according to the city.
It's very common in parks, in lanes, in city laneways, and other public areas.
As you can see, not even concrete blocks or steel fencing is enough to keep illegal dumpers out of here. As far as the city goes, they say they've laid 218 charges for illegal dumping in the past 2 years. That's only a fraction, though, of the number of complaints they've received. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Remember, if you have a story you would like us to look into, we would love to hear from you. Just send us an email, torontotips@cbc.ca. The former longtime mayor of Mississauga is celebrating a milestone this week. Hazel McCallion, also known as Hurricane Hazel, turns 99 tomorrow. Farah Morelli caught up with her at a celebration at Riviera Retirement Living, where she's CEO. That is Chief Elder Officer.
Wow, 1, 2, 3.
It is with great pleasure that we are going to, on behalf of Riviera, celebrate number 99. And I would say, Wayne Gretzky, get out of the way. Hazel's coming down the line like Eddie Shack. Happy birthday, Hazel. We love you.
I know we're a day early, but how does 99 feel?
I don't feel I'm 99. I think you're only as old as you feel. So thank you to everybody for.
You retired a little more than 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But you haven't exactly put your feet up. What keeps you going?
Well, I've been active all my life. I think that's one reason why maybe both physically and mentally, I think it helps you to be healthy.
Is it possible that this will cost the taxpayers of Mississauga a considerable amount of money?
As far as if I have my way, it won't.
36 years as mayor of Mississauga. Do you miss politics at all? Anything about politics?
I don't miss the politics, because politics is a very unusual game. But I do miss working with the staff at the city of Mississauga. You know, we took a city from a rural area, it was a rural area, and built it into the 6th largest city in Canada.
When you look back on your life, the 99 years, is there one thing that you think of that you are the most proud of, or your greatest achievement, whether it's in your personal life or as a politician?
Well, first of all, I was very proud of how we handled the derailment in my first year in office. I think we put Mississauga on the world map as a result of that, because it was, so again, a team approach. Tonight I go to see the Leafs play. They better win tonight for me.
Yeah, they have to. It's for your birthday.
I know. That would be the nicest party they could give me, is to win tonight.
Happy birthday, Hazel.
Thank you.
And we hope we'll be back for the big 100 next year.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know, but...
Or 100 or 109?
I said that they're setting up, the committees are set up already for 100. I said, if I'm not here, celebrate anyway.
Happy birthday to you.
It would be great to celebrate a 100 with Hazel. Yes, it will be cold for the next few days, but take a look at this. January was the hottest January in recorded history, according to the American National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This map shows the areas where the temperature in January was warmer or cooler than average. The places in red, of course, warmer, and those darkest red spots, those are places where the temperature set a record warmth. The average temperature last month was 1.13 degrees Celsius above the average for the 20th century. That's the highest in 141 years of climate records. And I don't need to say anything else, Colin. We'll leave it right there.
Yeah, we know how we experienced January, and generally it was mild for us as well. We were all part of that. And now here we are into this corridor, short one, where we're going to see some very cold air plunging in. But sometimes with climate change, too, it is about the extremes that you see. So here we go. This was 8 a.m. this morning. -1 was our temperature, just a little bit of a wind chill, and it was -2 in Barrie, but Sudbury, -24. The cold front, that leading edge of this new air mass, started to push down from north to south. That means by 1 p.m., just after the lunch hour, the winds were picking up. We were at -4. Barrie dropped to -10. And then this past hour, really, -14 for Barrie. We're at -9. And that's the temperature, folks. So the wind chill actually at the moment is -17. And that cold air is going to continue to move in, the core of it. We're finding pressure building as this is a ridge of high pressure that's coming in, but it does mean our temperature is going to fall further. So there's that front beyond us. Of course, we had some of the light snow that's come with the passage of this front. And now some of that, because the winds are still strong, drifting around. So even in areas where it's not falling, you may get into a little bit of reduced visibility. Not only that, but with the stronger winds coming across the lake, Lake Huron, it's highly localized, but there are some squalls that have set up. The general trend, though, is actually going to be, because this is high pressure, clearing. So yes, cold. We have the extreme cold warning in place that we started off earlier in the show telling you about, but we're also going to get into sunshine as we go through the day on Friday, and of course not lost that it is Valentine's Day, so it will be a sunny Valentine's Day, then some clouds into the afternoon hours, and Saturday's pretty quiet, kind of a mix of sun and cloud that we'll be seeing. And then late day, so Saturday night into Sunday, another system's going to push through. It looks like a fairly weak one, however, and so I think we'll see maybe 1 to 3 centimeters from that, and really not much more than a dusting is what we're going to get out of that. So overnight tonight, yes, you are seeing this correctly. This is where our temperatures are going. We have not been used to this. We haven't seen temperatures like this since the beginning of February of 2019. So there we are, -19, -20 at Pearson, -22 for Markham, and of course the wind chills near -30 or even colder. And then a look at tomorrow afternoon, running about 10 degrees below seasonal, even for our daytime highs, so -8 for the city, and even in the afternoon, feeling like -14. These winds late afternoon towards tomorrow evening will start to turn more towards the south. They're also going to be backing off a little bit, so things are going to improve. It is short-lived, but do know, as we mentioned, there's a warning in place for a reason. It is dangerous when we have cold levels like this. Certainly your skin can freeze. You have to worry about frostbite. It's not for anyone to be outside, or at least certainly to have your skin exposed, and not for your pets to be out too long either. So a look at that -28. That's at about 8 a.m. tomorrow morning in terms of how it will feel. By afternoon, -14. Look at this into the weekend, though. There we go, -2 Saturday. That system moves in and actually pushes our temperature right back above seasonal by the end of the weekend.
From -28 to +2. All right. Next
Yeah,
caller.
all right. What else can you say? All right.
Exactly. Still ahead, we take a look back at the opening of an iconic Toronto shopping mall. Plus, a little later, we take you to the beach.
When you think about a day on the beach, you're probably imagining it to be summertime, but these structures aim to beautify the landscape and get more people interacting with art in the winter.
This one's called Noodle Feed. Very exciting. It's very colorful noodles, which we invite people to come and reconfigure the noodles.
I'm Talia Ricci, and coming up, we'll give you a preview of the winter stations before their launch.
With tens of millions of people in China's coronavirus outbreak zone still under lockdown and businesses shuttered or slowed right across the country, the economic impact from the coronavirus epidemic has been nothing short of staggering, and so too the political fallout for China's government. Sasha Pichasek has more.
Some 2 months since the coronavirus was first found in Wuhan and hushed up, senior Communist Party officials are paying the price. The top man in virus-filled Hubei province was fired today, as was the party boss for Wuhan. Both were dismissed by President Xi Jinping. It was Xi's first real strike against local officials who have angered people at the epicenter of this crisis. After disappearing for days as the epidemic grew bigger and as doctors and patients grew desperate, Xi only resurfaced this week in Beijing, joking with locals, touring a hospital, and urging on Wuhan medical workers by video link. Xi has avoided actually visiting the hardest hit area, even as the government response initially floundered.
Prove to the world that this kind of party-state system is quite fragile.
Commentators like Bruce Lui say after building up his power for 7 years, Xi is trying to duck responsibility.
In good time, yeah, he can get all the applause. But during the bad time, when people want to find someone to blame, he is the one to blame.
And an even bigger crisis could be looming for Xi, an economic one, if quarantined workers can't get back to their factories soon.
not only Chinese companies, but also like Asia companies and also like in the US. Because as I said, the supply chain will create some kind of pressure.
As the problems pile up, Xi is facing the biggest challenge since he became president. His power and stature have grown so much that he's now reverently called the people's leader. Trouble is, the people aren't happy. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Hong Kong.
It's a sad day, you know.
It's a huge impact on the province.
Concern in Quebec after Bombardier sheds one of its main businesses, why the Canadian manufacturer is getting out of the commercial aviation game. Coming up next. Aerospace giant Bombardier has announced it's leaving the commercial aviation market. The Montreal-based company has sold its remaining stake in a partnership that builds A220 passenger jets. But as Alison Northcott explains, the factory will remain in Quebec and the provincial government will remain a leading investor.
For months, Bombardier workers have faced uncertainty around the company's future and their jobs. We'll continue to do our work, he says, with a little bit of relief. With soaring debt and facing losses this year, Bombardier announced today it's leaving the commercial plane business, selling off its part of the A220 passenger jet program to Airbus.
We want to exit commercial aviation and to concentrate on business jet, because this is a place where we believe that there's a bigger potential.
In 2015, the previous Quebec government invested more than $1 billion in the A220 program, formerly called the C-Series.
The nervous center of the A220, the knowledge is not in Toulouse, not in Hamburg, it's here.
Today, Quebec's economy minister was optimistic the province will one day see a return on that investment and confident more than 3,000 jobs will be protected.
This is a huge impact on the province. No longer owned by Bombardier, but still a big impact for us. We should be happy about that.
Bombardier has been an anchor of Quebec's aerospace industry and has benefited from millions of taxpayer dollars, but the province says it has no plans to give it any more.
It's a sad day, you know, frankly.
Analysts say Bombardier took on too much at once.
3 programs all in one go for such a small player without the deep pockets that, you know, the Boeing and Airbus of this world have was a big, big gamble.
The union says this deal is the best case scenario under the circumstances.
We end up with an employer who's already showed in the last 2 years that their intent is to grow their footprint here in Quebec, to maintain the jobs, to create a good relationship with the Quebec government.
There could be more changes ahead for Bombardier. The company has reportedly been in talks to sell off its rail division, too. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
The Canadian International Auto Show is about to get underway here in Toronto, and the event that draws an average of 300,000 visitors every year. At the show, Canadians can see the future of cars, but as Peter Armstrong tells us, few seem ready to embrace it.
In a lot of ways, auto shows are a glimpse into the future to see what cars some point down the road are going to look like. Autonomous cars like this one, electric cars. But they're also a really good glimpse into what's actually happening right now in the auto industry. Because right now, most consumers are still worried about the price of electric cars, about the range of electric cars. Automakers aren't making nearly enough of them to keep up with the meager demand. It's still less than 3% of cars sold, and government regulations, seemingly ever changing, complicate that picture even further. And right now, because in part of a lot of that, that is what's selling in Canada. 75% of vehicles sold in Canada last year are crossovers and SUVs, very traditional cars. And it gives you a sense that even though we can see what the future may look like, that path towards it is still a very long road. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto's most iconic shopping mall opened its doors to the public this week in 1977. A pipe band played as dignitaries came down the escalator, marking the official opening of the Eaton Centre. Considered an architectural landmark, it was meant to revitalize the downtown. Members of the public waited for hours for the doors to open.
How long have you been waiting here?
I waited the other door soon after 7 o'clock.
2 hours?
Yes.
2 hours. Are you excited about this new store?
Oh, sure, we wouldn't miss this for the world.
Even then Premier Bill Davis got into the shopping spirit.
In fact, I'm looking forward to having my wife come here and shop myself.
Today, the mall has more than 300 stores and restaurants. It brings in tens of millions of shoppers every year. After the break, we give you a sneak peek of the art you can check out at the beach's Winter Station. Some cool stuff for you. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The 6th annual Beaches Winter Stations will officially launch on Family Day. There are 4 stations in total, selected from hundreds of designs. Talia Ricci gives us a preview.
These structures you see in place of the lifeguard stations are the winners of an international design competition. And the theme of this year's winter stations is Beyond the Senses.
Yeah, at Winter Stations, we've always had a mandate to have interactive art for people of all ages. So these are artworks that we invite people to come up, they can touch, they can climb the lifeguard stands. This one's called Noodle Feed. Very exciting, it's very colorful noodles, which we invite people to come and reconfigure the noodles.
It's a piece which can be perceived from both externally and inside it. So when you're standing at a distance, it's kind of representing sort of poise and balance. And when you're within it, each of those forms represent different aspects of the senses.
We use this reflective tape. We intended to do something that played with the wideness of this landscape. We thought it would be nice to have some sort of sunset while we are here on the beach.
In the winter, no one really thinks about what a beautiful landscape this is. So part of the idea of this competition was to get people outdoors, get them out and engaged with the beach, experience the winter, and see some artwork while they're at it.
You can visit the 4 winter stations until the end of March. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Get out there, enjoy winter. Just don't do it tomorrow morning at -28.
Yeah, it'd be a good time to maybe keep it inside. There's going to be plenty of opportunities, though, because this is short-lived.
Yes.
But it is some extreme cold, and that's why there's an extreme cold warning. And we also have the warming stations open for the city as well with this extreme cold weather alert. So both of those in place. This is what we're looking at. The temperature going to -20 overnight tonight. We're on our way. It's been falling through the day. It will feel like close to -30. We have sunshine tomorrow, a very, very chilly start to the day, and then even in the afternoon, Dwight, that's about 10 degrees below seasonal, that -8 that we're going to see. But weekend, we come back up again.
Scarves, jackets, toques, everything tomorrow. That's our show for tonight. We will see you back here tomorrow at 6. Mike has you covered at 11 after the National.